welcome to a special web edition of our show with Gloria Vanderbilt and, of course, her son Anderson Cooper, authors of the book The Rainbow Comes and Goes and the documentary on HBO Nothing Left Unsaid.
I was so nervous during the TV part of this.
I know.
I'm much more relaxed. I'm glad we're doing a webisode. I'm glad the whole TV thing's gone.
I don't know why whenever it's a webisode, we think that nobody's seeing it.
Well,
it's
also,
so crazy.
During the commercial breaks, they kept pressuring me about having children, which I was like, this isn't really a good time. Like, do we really need to bring this up now?
Because your mom and I agree that you would make an incredible father.
Yes.
I think that you should have children. And I said this to you and Benjamin. I think that you would be amazing fathers.
I'm working 2 jobs. I don't know that I don't have the time.
Listen, I have kids. Strahan works 19 jobs. He has 4 kids. You can do it. It can be done.
Yeah.
Yes, and I will give you my womb and whatever else. Huh? How can you pass that opportunity?
I don't know. I'm not sure how that works exactly.
I don't know, but there's Cameron Diaz wrote a medical book.
So we spent a year basically changing the conversation, having a new conversation in this book, and I basically just started on my mom's 91st birthday. I started asking her questions about things that I didn't know about her life because I didn't want there to be anything that was left unsaid between us. I didn't want, you know, when my dad died when I was 10, I've always imagined that there was this letter that he had written me that would show up on my birthday or on an important event, kind of telling me all about his life and who he was. And it turns out my mom had the same, you had that same fantasy about your father.
Because my father died when I was 15 months old. Right. And I always had a fantasy that he had written a letter to me, telling me how much he loved me and how beautiful I was going to become and how brilliant I was going to be and how fantastic a daughter I was, and you know, on and on along those lines. And that he had put it in a bottle and thrown it into the ocean, and that I would find it. And then, of course, a lot of bottles floated by with...
But never the right one.
No,
so
never the
interesting
right one.
when you think about it, because I've been fortunate enough to have been, you know, raised by my parents, and they're both alive today, and I feel so fortunate, especially when I hear the two of you talk about how, you know, losing a parent at an early age, or having never known your father really, it leaves its mark in a way that everything seems possible, right? You say
well,
about
as
a
I
fatherless
quote Mary Gordon in the book, whose part of the quote is, a fatherless girl feels all things possible and nothing safe. Right. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And then at 10, your grandmother and your nurse schemed with your aunt to sue for custody against your own mother. And there was this giant trial. It was called the trial of the century at the time. At the height of the Depression, it was the biggest trial that had ever occurred. There were 100 reporters in the courtroom throughout the entire trial. And you were taken away from your mother by the courts and given to this aunt who you really didn't even know.
I didn't even know, actually, that the Vanderbilt family existed in America, because my mother took me to Paris as soon as, you know, my father died. And
the courts decided she was unfit. Yes. And part of which was because she was accused of being a lesbian.
And this was, of course, in 1934. We have to sort of think of it in those terms. I mean, today that would not be considered you know, but in those days, I mean, Oscar Wilde was put in jail for it. People were killed for it. It was a terrible, terrible sin.
And that really affected you for much of your life.
For much of my life.
That fear that you, in fact, would be gay.
Yes, yes.
And so when I came out to you, was it strange?
Well, no, I had worked it. I mean, you know, it took me a long time, but I worked it out through my intelligence and my knowing.
Lots of gay people.
Well, couples like Jose Quintero, who was a dear friend who had a partner, and they were like husband and wife, and then I came to realize there is no difference between love between man and woman and woman, or man and woman. It's love, and it's something to be rejoiced.
And so when you met Anderson's father, Wyatt Cooper, that really, for me, in the documentary, it sort of seemed to be a changing point in your life where you had this more of a traditional family, would you say? Like
he really showed you what a family could be.
Yes, absolutely. And he came from a family of, I mean, literally he had like six, 7 brothers and sisters.
Right.
And this huge family, as big as this whole audience, bigger. I mean, it was as if he was related to everybody in the South, you know. Yeah. And they were all related, and it was very strange for me to, you know, having come from a very sort of different kind of, you know, family, to suddenly meet all these new relatives. And
the incredible thing I think about my mom is that, you know, she's been through she's experienced many losses. The death of my dad, my brother's suicide in 1988, and who was, you know, my brother was 23 and he killed himself in front of my mom. And yet, you've been able to continue forward. Did you always knew that you had that strength, that drive?
Well, I'm determined, you know. I mean, I really am determined to do the best I can and to keep going, and I'm just determined, you know. And I also do believe, as we've titled the book, the rainbow comes and goes. I mean, it's part of living to go through tragedies, and then the rainbow comes, and then
comes back.
Well,
you're the biggest optimist I know. I'm completely pessimistic.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, and it's true. I'm a total catastrophist. I believe, yeah, sure, maybe the rainbow comes back, but how do you know you'll be there where it comes back? Like, what if it comes back around the corner, you don't actually see it?
I think that you two are so similar, though. When I watched the documentary, and even in the reading of your words, you both sound so similar to me. Although you are more pessimistic, you are more optimistic. You are very similar.
Well, that's what I discovered, and I think that's what's so cool, and why I sort of really just hope this book encourages people to start a new conversation with someone in their life, because, particularly with an aging parent before it's too late, because I learned so much not only about my mom's life, which I never knew, but also about myself and how similar we are, and
I learned about you too.
And that drive, that determination she has, I realize I have that as well. It sort of shows itself in different forms, but you know, it's a similar drive to kind of move forward through whatever obstacle occurs.
You said that thing about you watched the Jacques Cousteau documentary on the sharks, and you learned that if
Yeah, when I was a kid, I watched a Jacques Cousteau documentary. I learned that sharks have to keep moving in order to breathe. It's the only way they can force water through their gills. And that image is always stuck in my mind, of kind of always needing to move forward in order to continue to breathe.
If Anderson had gotten married to a woman, who would you have preferred it be, me or Kathy Griffin?
This is a tough one.
This is the most important question you'll ever be asked.
This is a question that Kathy Griffin is a dear, dear friend. You are my fantasy daughter.
Okay, so I think we have the answer.
Kathy is also a fantasy daughter, a different kind, you know,
yes.
A different personality fantasy daughter. Why not both? No, I can't have both.
You can have both.
No,
I'm very liberal. I'm very generous. I'm very generous.
No.
Okay, fine. It's done. Now, I also, so many people in the audience, I have to say, when they heard you were coming on the show, talk about you as a fashion designer. And, of course, your iconic Gloria Vanderbilt jeans, and how that really revolutionized the fashion industry at the time. And there you are with that picture of the, you know, I remember my first pair. But what I learned about you through Anderson is that you're such a great artist, and I didn't know that before, that you are you're an accomplished artist.
Well, that's really where I live, you know.
Well, yeah, my mom's been, you know, painting since she was a child, and she's having a show at First Dibs at the end of this month, and she has a website, Gloria Vanderbilt Fine Arts, where you can look at some of her artwork as well. But that's what's great about the documentary, is it really shows her as an artist and shows sure the importance of her. And you have a painting of
I
hers
do.
in your
I
house.
have.
Oh, you have one of my favorites.
It's our very favorite possession.
And you know, it fits so perfectly.
Did you?
I couldn't believe it.
You have to come over and see it in person.
In Kelly's living room, it just was
It's
made.
over the mantelpiece.
It's over the mantel.
It was,
yeah.
but it was like it was made for it.
We feel like it was made
Yeah,
for us. We
yeah.
always feel like it is us. Mark and I look at it
Oh,
and
I'm
we feel
so
like
happy.
it's us.
What do you hope that people get from the book?
What do I hope?
Yeah.
Well, I hope that they can relate to it as if they're talking to themselves in a certain sense, and that they will look. Love is all. I mean, this is really what it's all about. And it's all that we really have in the world and what's important. And we have to love each other, and we have to be close to those who are related to us and those that we love. And I hope this book will make people not be afraid to expose how they feel, to say how they feel, and to love each other more, because love is all, you know.
I want to thank Gloria Vanderbilt, of course, and I want to thank Anderson Cooper, my dear friend. Make sure you go out and get The Rainbow Comes and Goes. It's available today, right?
That's right. It just came out today.
As a matter of fact, I downloaded it, and my download came today. Yeah. And also, make sure you see Nothing Left Unsaid, Gloria Vanderbilt and Anderson Cooper. It will debut Saturday at 9 p.m. on HBO. This was nice. This was great. Thank you for sticking around.